Do not be ignorant to the power of internal encouragement, for a person who lacks internal encouragement will allow externally harsh grievances to take advantage of themselves. It is not motivation, but a form of encouragement that is required for the philosophical soul to move beyond his limitations. That is from my book, The Book of Oldishness, that I published last year, and something that I'm beginning to see more and more is that the esoteric, the occult, and the great mysticism of life in of itself is seemingly becoming more and more mainstream. It is simply a matter of whether or not you will allow the magic behind these things to exploit you or to allow you to see something more clearly. It is simply the case that many of the NPCs, which I perceive to be a phenomenon in this existence, will be exploited, and their retardedness will be exploited as well. Meanwhile, you will experience a supernatural breakthrough. But this is not the supernatural breakthrough that perhaps you would think. It is a breakthrough of the supernatural into naturalness. I no longer believe in supernatural, because to believe in supernatural is to lie, to be the lie about something beyond that which is actually not beyond. Something that is considered to be supernatural is not really supernatural at all to me. Naturalness is the awareness that you yourself are an electromagnetic satellite, broadcasting its frequency into this domain of life, whatever you want to call it. I have distinguished personally between real time and true time, with real time being the narrative of a story, whatever it is that you are telling yourself, or maybe what history or the advisors on history are telling us about the chronological events of time, fullness, and not timelessness. To move into timelessness, and for those that are Regal change old timers, you will understand exactly what I mean, because we are referring to here the Regal timeline theory, in which there are timelines that you are on that move toward a collapsing timeline, time fullness, or timelessness. Now, God is timelessness in this theory. Now, I also do not even want to describe godliness with the term God anymore, because the term in of itself has become so saturated and misused, and people misguide themselves by using the word. You see, to some people, materialism is their God, and to some people, abstract qualities and concepts are their God. So it is a matter of, well, how exactly do you exhibit yourself to godliness? How do you integrate godliness into your life? Do you have a godlike mastery mindset, or do you have a godlike mastery proclivity toward moving toward timelessness? That is the best way to describe it. And in this day and age, we are experiencing symbolism out the wazoo. In fact, we are experiencing more and more and more supernatural activity, when in reality, whatever it is that you want to determine to be, because there is real time and true time, in real time, the symbolic perspectives of life are becoming ever more apparent to us. There are many symbols that we associate certain things with, and that our subconscious mind is being programmed with on the daily. And it is only through seeing that we can move beyond the trap of the real-time narrative that we move into true time, which is timelessness. True time, being timelessness, frees you. And it has become apparent to me that freedom makes oneself dizzy, because when there is freedom and there is no one to exactly tell you what to do and how to do it, there's an anxiety that arises. And this is why many people, in fact, want to be enslaved. They want to be enslaved to an idea, not an ideal, because I don't think that you can truly be enslaved to an ideal, since an ideal is something you have to embody, whereas an idea, that can take hold of you, that can caress you into maneuvering through life in a certain way. And if it is not incumbent upon you to see how this idea is behaving inside you, it will lead you astray. Now, what exactly does that entail, and what does that mean? Well, it means that there are going to be situations that increase the probability of your lacking discernment or increasing discernment. It depends on the type of timeline that you really are on. Now, something that I've been pondering on recently is the differentiation between high value timelines, low value timelines, high cost timelines, and low cost timelines. People who do not understand the difference and the differentiation between cost and value will be naturally on low cost, low value timelines, or they will be on low value, high cost timelines. And it is those who are on high value, high cost timelines that are usually the risk taker. This is the builder, the risk taker, the one with the loose identity. Whereas the one who is on a high value and low cost timeline, or a low cost, high value timeline, these are going to be people who are operating safely, generally speaking, through the society. And they might not even know that they're choosing security. However, it is simply going to be the case that failure to understand what part of the timeline you are on and what kind of timeline you are on, it will lead you into time fullness, which embodies you, rather you embodying it, or it will lead to timelessness, where you embody the light of Christ. Now, when I say Christ, I really mean truth. I don't even really want to use the term or the name Jesus Christ anymore to describe truth, simply because, again, it has become so saturated as a narrative, and in real time, people are using the name of Christ to manipulate the masses on a grand scale. And it is sickening to me to see this. It is despicable and it is reprehensible. And this goes back to my book here, and what we talked about at the very beginning with internal encouragement. Every single day we start off with self-talk to some degree. How we're feeling or telling ourselves certain things. At the gym today, for example, I heard many people discuss about how tired they were and how exhausted they are. And I even heard another person who was talking to what seemed like a long-term friend of theirs. They are in communication with one another very often, and allegedly his wife, one of the people's wives, mentioned and texted this other friend about meeting up together with their wives, and they wanted to do a double date of some kind, right? And they were talking about this while I was on the machine next to them. And I do not wear headphones at the gym because I like to be aware of my surroundings. And the one man said, "Oh, I saw the text of your wife and I just completely forgot about it. I got so busy that I had to forget." And it was almost as if he was flexing about how busy he was. This whole pride that comes from being busy in our day and age is disgusting to the soul. It is reprehensible to the soul. And this puts you on a high cost, low value timeline down the line. Because what this symbolizes to me and what crystallizes to me is that this person is, yes, they have a busy life, but how reliable are they going to be in the long term? How reliable of a friend would you want to have if they can't even take care of the little things? Now, these are people that are fairly well off from the conversations that I've heard around these people, because I see them every day, practically, at the gym. And it's very interesting going to a nicer gym because you're surrounded by seemingly more high-value people. And yet it seems as though many people cannot differentiate between high cost and high value. Many people perceive themselves to be high value, when in reality, they're just a high cost. Now, this does not mean that high cost is always negative. It does not mean that high value is going to be always positive, depending on the timeline that you're in. Because you could be on a high cost, high value timeline and still be unable to achieve what you want to achieve. But low cost, high value timeline, that's going to be very much so a sweet spot, depending on how you view value and how you view cost. So to give you an example, as far as a metaphor, to help crystallize this understanding, see to it that you maybe are going to the gym every single day, and it costs you about 1 to 2 hours per day. That is bare minimum, in my view. But that is the low cost. That is a low cost for a high value in the long term. Now, what would happen if you stopped going to the gym for, let's say, 3 months? Well, now all of a sudden you're on a low cost, low value timeline. That's exactly where you end up. Low cost, low value timelines are where people go to stagnate, to be hyper comfortable, and to be in despair within their soul and have filth lay at the bottom of their souls because they have not chosen any type of cost that is going to be worth something in the long term. The low cost, low value timeline is where people go to simply be less free and seem as though they are more free. This is for the people who value pleasantries and maybe peasantries as well, because it is a low cost, it is a low value, which is naturally going to put you in regard to peasantry land. We can think about low cost, low value timelines as peasantry land, whereas high cost, high value timelines can be more so of non-peasantry. Regal, let's say the regal quadrant. That is the regal timelines. That is high cost and high value, because it is simply a matter of fact that the more effort you put in to certain things is not always going to equal a high value. It might have a high cost, but that doesn't mean it's going to be a high value. It might be a low value. So now you understand the difference between high value and low value. I am redefining these terms in regard to the regal timeline theory, because in order for you to understand the type of awakening and awareness that is going to have to occur, you must not be dizzy from freedom. There has to be some sense of grounding. And I understand this, and yet at the same time, I get exhausted having to explain these things. Because that in of itself, always having to explaining, is a high cost, low value timeline. And that is not a timeline that you necessarily want to be on long term. Sometimes you have to be on that kind of timeline, but it'd be preferable not to. Because again, high cost, low value timelines, if peasants are where the low cost, low value timelines are, people who want to believe that they are regal and yet they live in peasantry land, they're the ones living on high cost, low value timelines. I wonder what it would be a good term for that kind of timeline. But the simple fact of the matter is that it comes back to, what is your internal dialogue? How are you speaking to other people? Do you feel confident? Do you feel reliable? Do you feel as though you can do anything? Do you feel limitless, and yet you know your limits, per se? This is all a matter of perspective, of course. And what is so interesting about the timeline theory, the regal timeline theory, suggests that there can be multiple perspectives of timelessness that seemingly contradict one another. And yet the value of God, or that source, that creator energy, the frequency of truth emanating through timelessness, although it seemingly contradicts one another, it is still true. And that is true time. It's not real time. So what exactly is the difference between real and realness and true and truthfulness? Real is a narrative. Realness is the quality of the narrative. And then truth is obviously the unfolding without story. And the truthfulness is the quality of that unfolding into timelessness. So I hope that this message was useful and insightful for you. I also hope that everybody has a blessed day. If you're interested in diving more into these topics, please consider doing a one-on-one consultation session with me, the Godlike Mastery program that I have, or join the Regal Change Academy for free, or the premium tier. The free tier provides access to the community board. The premium tier provides access to the community board, as well as the group calls and the classes. Be blessed. Peace be with you. Until next time.